Hey, has anyone else noticed how fighting game story modes lately have really sucked? It's like they won't even make a fighting game without these tacked on story modes to make it seem worth the price. This kind of shit is really bothering me, and it's obviously causing some issues. So let me take you through a few games that have come out and explain to you what they're doing wrong. Now, I think that a lot of people see the NetherRealm Studios games as the best story modes we have at the moment. On the surface, everything seems good. They really present themselves almost like blockbuster movies, something you could kind of sit down and eat popcorn to. In fact, you could say that Mortal Kombat 9 kind of pioneered the style that most of the story modes that followed would take. I call this the movie-like style, and I'm just gonna say it, this is the worst kind. Yes, they look nice and honestly can be pretty damn enjoyable, but I called them movie-like for a reason. They're not really doing much with the video game format. Fucking Injustice 1 does these shitty little mini-games where you just press buttons when things show up on screen, and MKX has reaction commands in its cutscenes, and this is meant to be gameplay. Damn you! Does Superman fucking even realize that there's people in those cars? I mean, Black Adam's just yanking them right off a busy street, and fucking Superman doesn't give a shit. Nothing about this is pushing the envelope on what it means to be the story mode for a fighting game. Fighting games on a surface level are all about characters and pitting them against each other in a fight. Unfortunately, this means that if you're going to make a story in one, you're going to have to get these characters to fight each other so the player can have something to do. The NetherRealm way to handle this is to contrive scenarios where characters are suddenly willing to beat the shit out of each other, often in brutal and unsurvivable ways, only to get up and shake their fist at the winner in the next cutscene. There's this one scene in Injustice 2 where Harley Quinn begins hallucinating an image of the Joker back from the dead. This alone is just fine. It even adds a bit of character depth. The problem is that, in a way of symbolically letting go, she proceeds to fight her hallucination. Physically, with punches. And guns. I gotta say, it's almost insulting to me how stupid this is. She's supposed to be horrified. Her past abuser is coming back from the grave, and she just assumes her silly little idol pose, like it's any other fight. I mean, come on, at least change her idol pose. You have the budget, for fuck's sake. This kind of shit is really hard to take seriously. It just makes the characters seem really immature and stupid. This one is protected. Lately, Capcom has even taken a stab at the story mode shtick. In their most recent fighting games, Street Fighter V and... yeah, that's their most recent one. Oh, that was close. The biggest problem with Street Fighter V's and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite story modes is that they both actively detract from the quality of their game, especially Marvel Infinite, considering based on what we know about it, most of the budget went to making this terrible story mode. This basically forced the art team to have the game take on a style more akin to the MCU. Which, by the way, do you think that the masses can't recognize your fucking characters unless they resemble their movie counterparts down to every last pixel of every last texture? Do you have such little faith in not only your own character designs, but also the Capcom artist's ability to render them in a recognizable way? Because you put your grubby, cocaine-glazed nose into other people's work, your characters are suffering. Rocket Raccoon has been subjugated to having some poor fucker try to do an impression of Bradley Cooper because you can't trust other people with your characters. Anyway, Marvel Infinite story mode isn't all that bad, to be quite honest. There's actually some really great fan service sprinkled in there with the whole blending of the Marvel and Capcom's lore. There's a few things here and there that kind of make me want to die.
It's an awesome responsibility.
Hey, we're awesome guys.
Nice.
But there are some genuinely cool moments, like Ryu and Hulk fighting the Elder Dragon.
Hulk!
Thanos making a Satsui no Hado gauntlet, the Infinity Buster, Ultron Sigma, like, all of that shit. And yeah, that's about all that stands out to me. Everything else is just tedious and cringy and borderline entertaining. Clay Fighter V's story is worse. There's basically nothing of substance here. The problems with the game's art style are on full blast here. The characters have huge hands and their asses are all hanging out. None of the characters are really well represented at all. Particularly Nikali, I still don't get what they were going for with this guy. The pacing is bad, the writing is bad, it has next to no redeeming factors. The best thing about it is how they flesh out Rashid as a character, and even that's not very good. Anyway, both of these games actually do one thing that I think is really important in a story mode. They let you fight Minion Characters. This is something that the Capcom games surpass the NetherRealm games with, in my opinion. In the NetherRealm games, the only people that you fight are other characters in the main roster. But in SF5 and Marvel Infinite, they actually modeled, and programmed, and created movesets for characters that can't even be played normally. In fact, as some of you may remember, the SF5 story mode featured Urian and Jury as playable characters before they were even on the character select screen. As for Marvel Infinite, there are only a few types of minion characters, and like SF5, they kind of steal a lot of animations from roster characters, so it's not a huge victory, but it's there. And yeah, I guess MKX did a kind of minion character thing by letting you fight characters that weren't playable, like, ever, and that's cool, but I see this more as a character cock tease than minion characters. I also want to take a sec to acknowledge the best minion character ever.
Nobody move!
Peter is a completely uniquely animated and utterly pointless fodder character that had way too much time put into him considering he'll only be on the screen for 30 seconds. Come on, dude. Oh, whoa, he called the jump. Aha! Oh god! He wants me in this corner. Oh, he got me! First hit. I actually meant to whiff that and he walked into it. I hope to see this guy playable in a later game or DLC as a cop who dedicates his life and career and sacrifices his marriage in the name of stopping street fighting across the globe. I could honestly make a whole short video about Peter, but I'll have to save that for another day. SF5 also has very short character stories that basically amount to staring at art that's amazing at some points, but unsettling at others. This would be better if the art styles of the artwork and the game models didn't clash so much. I honestly love this artist's style. It's the same guy that did the art for the Alpha games, but it just doesn't fit with SF5. They start out skinny and stylized and end up buff with massive hands. It looks bad. The Capcom story modes are overall pretty shitty. SF5's writing makes no sense, and Marvel Infinite really only makes sense in a fan-servicey way. They're alright, but definitely not the direction I would take. Next up, we have one of my favorite fighting games of the last year, Tekken 7. There's honestly not a whole lot to talk about here that I haven't already said about the Capcom and NRS games. The biggest problem with Tekken 7's story is that, sprinkled throughout, there are sections where this unnamed journalist dully narrates over some uninteresting artwork. This whole character could have been omitted entirely, and the story wouldn't suffer at all. The only purpose he serves is to fill time and to get Heihachi to expose a little bit about his past. But that's it. He does have very loose ties to some of the characters, but they aren't groundbreaking in the slightest. Despite the similarities this has to other games, Tekken 7's story mode is kind of fucking awesome. I should say that this is just about the only way they could have made a story mode for this game, while also being able to tell the story that they wanted to tell. In previous Tekken games, they actually put in kind of an arcade beat-em-up section. I never got to play it, but it looks alright all things considered. But I can't really see this style working for a Tekken game like 7. I give this game a bit more credit because Tekken is a little bit more complicated than most other fighting games, so the story mode that I would make would be considerably harder to do. Tekken 7 probably has the best movie-like story of all the fighting games. It has amazing action, really good cinematography, Akuma is in it and is injected into the lore in a way that makes sense. The best part about it is that they actually made the cutscenes transition smoothly into the gameplay. In every fight there's some kind of transition, sometimes that even affect the gameplay. Like maybe you have to sidestep or block at the beginning of the round so you don't get your shit blown out. I love this game, but oh shit! Oh god! And it actually kind of accomplishes the opposite effect that the narration segments do. It keeps things nicely paced. Like, you get the feeling that at any point you gotta put your hands on your controller so you don't get fucked up. In MKX or SF5, there's always a point in the cutscenes where you're kind of sick of having to sit there and watch people fucking talk. But this never really happens in Tekken 7 outside of the journalist sections, which admittedly get a groan out of me when they pop up. Also, the fights are considerably more challenging. A lot of it has to do with the fact that most characters in Tekken have upwards of 60 moves, and you're not just going to know them when you're forced to play a character that you haven't put any training into. Luckily, they put in a little hotkey so you can easily access some of the better moves at your disposal. Oh. 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 Oh, that's right. Oh. Tekken 7 is overall extremely enjoyable. It has a lot of the same problems that the Capcom stories have, but it kind of makes up for it with awesome moments and really nice transitions. The problem with the movie-like style is that it doesn't allow for much creativity in the video game medium. You're kind of forced to make a standard movie structure with the beginning, middle, and end. It's perfectly serviceable, but you don't want your game to be just that. So how can you make a story mode that feels more like a game? Well, first off, don't do it like Guilty Gear. If you don't know, the Guilty Gear Exard games just kind of said fuck it with their story mode and literally just made it into an in-engine anime movie. And you know what? Fuck it is right. That's fine. I'd honestly rather have that. Just get right to it. Just tell your story and don't pretend you can make some interesting mechanics out of it. Make your movie, add some cutscenes to the arcade mode. I respect that. Speaking of arcade mode, that's basically what they did with the story mode for Skullgirls. You get some cutscene, do a series of fights, get another cutscene, a final boss. Again, whatever, that's fine I guess. I can't really expect more from an indie dev. It's good that every character has their own story mode. It's all fully voiced and well drawn, so there's nothing I can really complain about here. However, if this were the extent of what a fighting game story mode could be, then this video would have no point. The recent obsession of mine, Dragonball FighterZ, has actually taken a few good steps towards the kind of thing I'm envisioning. But it also kind of trips up the stairs face first into a pile of dog shit. Basically, you have 3 different arcs, as the game refers to it. Hero, villain, and android. Unfortunately, the word arc is a bit misleading here. From the outside, you can kind of see this being 3 completely separate stories like the arcs from the actual show, or maybe like a Sonic Adventure thing, where you play as different characters in the same story and events intertwine as they unfold. Well, no. Weirdly enough, each arc tells a slightly different version of the same story, but each one takes place in its own continuity? Like in one you play as the good guys, but in another you play as the good guys and the bad guys. They even have the same villain, Android 21. The main thing that changes from arc to arc is the character that the player is linked to. So when you play the hero arc, you play as a linked soul inside Goku. In the villain arc, you're inside Frieza. And in the android arc, you're inside 18. These are effectively the protagonists of their own story mode, while using the linked soul to contextualize the player's involvement. It's kinda cheesy, but it works. But I just kinda wanna comment on this dumb shit. Arxis, why? Why have all these stories take place in a different timeline? Why not have the different stories intertwine with each other? It can't be that hard to do. Actually, here's why. The player has to fucking win every fight. So instead of creating different paths on the story based on whether you win or lose, or even just have fights that are mandatory to lose, they decided to make it so that the story mode is a breeze no matter who you fight. This story mode is so easy that it's boring. The game has these basically non-existent RPG mechanics that mean absolutely nothing to even a mid-level player. Like, oh shit, it's Kid Buu, he's about 20 levels above me and he's dead. What is the point of having these levels if they don't offer anything substantial to the gameplay? All this affects is the amount of health that the characters have. And when the enemy isn't really all that into blocking attacks, this just becomes a way to practice basic-ass combos. Come the fuck on, man. There's so many better ways to do this. This is what brings me to my solutions. What can be done to make a fighting game story mode worth the player's time? Here are my tips for accomplishing this. 1. Make your fighting game story mode literally anything but a fighting game. Fighting games are, at their worst, when the player isn't playing another player. So don't make your story mode a series of AI matches, or it will get incredibly fucking stale. So you have to make it a completely different genre to keep it engaging for a single player. Here's a couple of examples. In Killer Instinct, the main story mode is a timed, text-based strategy adventure with slight elements of deck building and resource management. It allows you to pick whatever characters you want and give them items and abilities that aren't normally accessible in the multiplayer mode. This way, once the player has mastered their character's movesets, they still have some extra abilities to take advantage of. This mode is also really challenging, so that's a little bit of a plus. The story mode for Super Smash Bros. Brawl is a side-scrolling beat-em-up platformer with puzzle and Metroidvania elements. This basically turns Smash into a Kirby game, with more intellectual properties allowing for more enemies, boss variety, and fan service. It also has slightly branching pathways based on the player's actions in certain levels, creating replayability. There's also drop-in, drop-out co-op, allowing for even more fun to be had and memories to be made. These games are still played in the same way as normal, they're just given more and different context. 2. Keep the main cast balanced while allowing the player to unlock boss and minion characters. If your story mode has minion characters, fucking make them shit selectable. Even the boss characters. Don't think for a second about the competitive scene when you implement them. If the character's bad, no one will play them. If it's OP, they'll just ban it. Keep the heart of the cast correctly balanced and let people sift through the extra characters on their own. There's this fucking sick game on the DS called Bleach Dark Souls, which is basically a real-ass anime fighting game with Bleach characters. The reason I bring it up is because this game did the daft thing of not only having minion characters, but allowing you to select them, creating utter chaos. There's a minion character that spawns other minion characters. And guess what? You can even unlock that guy! Generally, these characters were unbalanced and played like shit, but that's what's so great about them. Imagine a world where there's a random from fucking Madagascar that somehow gets to Evo Top 8 with the equivalent of a fucking Cyberman. I don't know about you guys, but that's the world I want to live in. It gives these guys motivation to play as these ass characters so that they can be recognized and revered by the people in their scene. 3. Make it an action RPG. Fighting games fit perfectly into the mold of a JRPG. Just think about it. There are regular attacks, special attacks, attacks that require a resource, ultimate attacks that require the most resources, multiple characters with all of the above that you can learn and team build with, some of which you'll prefer over others. So if you build your story mode around these elements, you have a recipe for success. Here's a kicker. You know how you have to level up to get spells in JRPGs? Fuck it, do the same thing with special moves. You start out with the basic kit of normals, and when you get to level 2, you unlock the Light Hadouken. Next you get the Light Tatsu, then the Light Shoryuken. Upgrade that shit so you can use the medium and heavy versions. Eventually you'll unlock your EX moves, then your Super. This allows you to get a more intimate understanding of each individual move. It also gradually gives you more options, more combos, setups, strategies. You like overworlds? We got those. You like random encounters? We got those. You can grind and shit. You got towns and shit. You got dungeons and shit. You got secret areas and shit. You got items and shit. But all this time, you're playing a fighting game, learning its ins and outs, finding a main, concocting a strategy. This is a JRPG that everyone plays in their own way. This is a fighting game. 4. Slowly teach the player how to play the game at a higher and higher level. This is probably the most important one. Like I said earlier, in Dragon Ball's story mode, the enemies are nothing more than glorified training mode dummies. This does nothing to teach the player how to properly play Dragon Ball at even a low level. Okay, so imagine you're playing the Dragon Ball story mode, and up until now, the level 1 AI hasn't blocked shit. You've been running up, pressing a button, and it just works. They might block every now and then just to let you know that blocking even exists, but they get hit almost every time. Now, you get to the first boss, and all of a sudden, fuck! He keeps blocking my attacks. I can't hit this guy. But as you keep experimenting, you find out that this guy doesn't block low. Now you have a strategy. Instead of just running up and attacking, you have to approach him with low attacks to open him up. After that, for all regular enemies, you might have to open them up with a low attack first. Naturally, this will evolve into enemies that only block low, so you have to start going for jump-ins and overheads. But then this guy blocks everything, so I gotta open him up with a Dragon Rush or a Command Grab. This guy keeps jumping around, so I gotta knock him down so I can keep up the pressure. This guy wakes up with DP every time. This guy has a ridiculous punish game, so I gotta be more defensive and not use punishable moves. At this rate, by the time you're fighting a level 100 final boss, you're having an EVO Grand Finals level fight with an AI. You're mixing it up, it's mixing you up, you're getting high damage combos, it's doing the same. This is what it means to have progression in a fighting game. Even if there's no real level up system, there's an invisible mental level up system that's constantly getting XP in every moment of the match. This is teaching you not only how to get good at a fighting game, but how to enjoy getting good in a natural way. All of this is exactly what happens when you play against real people, only the setting of a story mode is a completely safe environment to understand these concepts. Well, that's all I can think of. Maybe someone smarter than me can come up with a few more things, but I just wanted to air my grievances about these story modes that have become far too common. Can we finally start making this shit a little bit more enjoyable? Hey, that's just about the end of the video, so if you don't like end cards, then get the fuck out. This is the first time I've ever done something like this, at least successfully, and I just want to say sorry that it took so long. This video actually took like 6 months to make, and it's kind of embarrassing how slow I was, but I've just been busy as fuck at work. And also I'm a little lazy. Anyway, if you like this kind of thing, let me know, because it was kind of fun to make despite how long it took. And I've actually got a few more really cool ideas that I want to put to practice, so just let me know. I guess hit like, share the video, subscribe if you want. This is the part where I start plugging shit. Go to my Twitter if you want. I'm at MonkeyLawyer on Twitter. If you want to catch my Twitch streams, especially since Smash is about to come out, then you know, link in the description. And hey, again, thanks. This has been really cool. I guess I'll see you guys in the next video, if I ever make it. Bye.